The Life Divine by Aurobindo. Chapter 27. The Sevenfold Chord of Being. In the ignorance of my mind, I ask of these steps of the gods that are set within. The all-knowing gods have taken the infant of a year, and they have woven about him 7 threads to make this weft. Rig Veda. We have now, by our scrutiny of the 7 great terms of existence, which the ancient seers fixed on as the foundation and sevenfold mode of all cosmic existence, discerned the gradations of evolution and involution, and arrived at the basis of knowledge towards which we were striving. We have laid down that the origin, the continent, the initial and the ultimate reality of all that is in the cosmos, is the triune principle of transcendent and infinite existence, consciousness, and bliss, which is the nature of divine being. Consciousness has 2 aspects, illuminating and effective. State and power of self-awareness, and state and power of self-force, by which being possesses itself, whether in its static condition or in its dynamic movement. For in its creative action, it knows by omnipotent self-consciousness all that is latent within it, and produces and governs the universe of its potentialities by an omniscient self-energy. This creative action of the all-existent has its nodus in the 4th, the intermediate principle of supermind or real idea, in which a divine knowledge, one with self-existence and self-awareness, and a substantial will which is in perfect unison with that knowledge, because it is itself in its substance and nature that self-conscious self-existence, dynamic in illumined action, develop infallibly the movement and form and law of things, in right accordance with their self-existent truth, and in harmony with the significances of its manifestation. The creation depends on and moves between the biune principle of unity and multiplicity. It is a manifoldness of idea and force and form, which is the expression of an original unity. And it is an eternal oneness, which is the foundation and reality of the multiple worlds, and makes their play possible. Supermind, therefore, proceeds by a double faculty of comprehensive and apprehensive knowledge. Proceeding from the essential oneness to the resultant multiplicity, it comprehends all things in itself, as itself the one in its manifold aspects. And it apprehends separately all things in itself as objects of its will and knowledge. While to its original self-awareness all things are one being, one consciousness, one will, one self-delight, and the whole movement of things, a movement one and indivisible. It proceeds in its action from the unity to the multiplicity, and from multiplicity to unity, creating an ordered relation between them, and an appearance, but not a binding reality, of division, a subtle, unseparating division, or rather a demarcation and determination within the indivisible. The supermind is the divine gnosis, which creates, governs, and upholds the worlds. It is the secret wisdom which upholds both our knowledge and our ignorance. We have discovered also that mind, life, and matter are a triple aspect of these higher principles, working, so far as our universe is concerned, in subjection to the principle of ignorance, to the superficial and apparent self-forgetfulness of the one in its play of division and multiplicity. Really, these three are only subordinate powers of the divine quaternary. Mind is a subordinate power of supermind, which takes its stand in the standpoint of division, actually forgetful here of the oneness behind, though able to return to it by re-illumination from the supramental. Life is similarly a subordinate power of the energy aspect of Satchidananda. It is force working out form and the play of conscious energy from the standpoint of division created by mind. Matter is the form of substance of being which the existence of Satchidananda assumes when it subjects itself to this phenomenal action of its own consciousness and force. In addition, there is a fourth principle which comes into manifestation at the nodus of mind, life, and body, that which we call the soul. But this has a double appearance. In front, the desire soul, which strives for the possession and delight of things. And behind, and either largely or entirely concealed by the desire soul, the true psychic entity, which is the real repository of the experiences of the spirit. And we have concluded that this fourth human principle is a projection and an action of the third divine principle of infinite bliss, but an action in the terms of our consciousness and under the conditions of soul evolution in this world. As the existence of the divine is in its nature an infinite consciousness, and the self-power of that consciousness, so the nature of its infinite consciousness is pure and infinite bliss. Self-possession and self-awareness are the essence of its self-delight. The cosmos also is a play of this divine self-delight, and the delight of that play is entirely possessed by the universal. But in the individual, owing to the action of ignorance and division, it is held back in the subliminal and the superconscient being. On our surface, it lacks and has to be sought for, found and possessed by the development of the individual consciousness towards universality and transcendence. We may therefore, if we will, pose 8 principles instead of 7. And then we perceive that our existence is a sort of refraction of the divine existence, in inverted order of ascent and descent, thus ranged. Existence, matter. Consciousness force, life. Bliss, psyche. Supermind, mind. The divine descends from pure existence through the play of consciousness, force, and bliss, and the creative medium of supermind into cosmic being. We ascend from matter through a developing life, soul, and mind, and the illuminating medium of supermind towards the divine being. the knot of the two, the higher and the lower hemisphere, is where mind and supermind meet with a veil between them. The rending of the veil is the condition of the divine life in humanity. For by that rending, by the illumining descent of the higher into the nature of the lower being, and the forceful ascent of the lower being into the nature of the higher, mind can recover its divine light in the all-comprehending supermind. The soul realizes its divine self in the all-possessing, all-blissful Ananda. Life repossesses its divine power in the play of omnipotent conscious force, and matter open to its divine liberty as a form of the divine existence. And if there be any goal to the evolution which finds here its present crown and head in the human being, other than an aimless circling and an individual escape from the circling, if the infinite potentiality of this creature, who alone here stands between spirit and matter with the power to mediate between them, has any meaning other than an ultimate awakening from the delusion of life by despair and disgust of the cosmic effort and its complete rejection, then even such a luminous and puissant transfiguration and emergence of the divine in the creature must be that high uplifted goal and that supreme significance. But before we can turn to the psychological and practical conditions under which such a transfiguration may be changed from an essential possibility into a dynamic potentiality, we have much to consider. For we must discern not only the essential principles of the descent of Satchidananda into cosmic existence, which we have already done, but the large plan of its order here, and the nature and action of the manifested power of conscious force which reigns over the conditions under which we now exist. At present, what we have first to see is that the 7 or the 8 principles we have examined are essential to all cosmic creation and are there manifested or as yet unmanifested in ourselves, in this infant of a year which we still are, for we are far yet from being the adults of evolutionary nature. The higher Trinity is the source and basis of all existence and play of existence, and all cosmos must be an expression and action of its essential reality. No universe can be merely a form of being which has sprung up and outlined itself in an absolute nullity and void, and remains standing out against a non-existent emptiness. It must be either a figure of existence within the infinite existence who is beyond all figure, or it must be itself the all-existence. In fact, when we unify ourselves with cosmic being, we see that it is really both of these things at once. That is to say, it is the all-existent figuring himself out in an infinite series of rhythms, in his own conceptive extension of himself as time and space. Moreover, we see that this cosmic action, or any cosmic action, is impossible without the play of an infinite force of existence, which produces and regulates all these forms and movements. And that force equally presupposes or is the action of an infinite consciousness, because it is in its nature a cosmic will, determining all relations and apprehending them by its own mode of awareness. And it could not so determine and apprehend them if there were no comprehensive consciousness behind that mode of cosmic awareness, to originate as well as to hold, fix, and reflect through it the relations of being in the developing formation or becoming of itself, which we call a universe. Finally, consciousness, being thus omniscient and omnipotent, in entire luminous possession of itself, and such entire luminous possession being necessarily and in its very nature bliss, for it cannot be anything else. A vast universal self-delight must be the cause, essence, and object of cosmic existence. If there were not, says the ancient seer, this all-encompassing ether of delight of existence in which we dwell, if that delight were not our ether, then none could breathe, none could live. This self-bliss may become subconscient, seemingly lost on the surface. But not only must it be there at our roots, all existence must be essentially a seeking and reaching out to discover and possess it. And in proportion as the creature in the cosmos finds himself, whether in will and power, or in light and knowledge, or in being and wideness, or in love and joy itself, he must awaken to something of the secret ecstasy. Joy of being, delight of realization by knowledge, rapture of possession by will and power or creative force, ecstasy of union in love and joy are the highest terms of expanding life, because they are the essence of existence itself in its hidden roots, as on its yet unseen heights. Wherever, then, cosmic existence manifests itself, these three must be behind and within it. But infinite existence, consciousness, and bliss need not throw themselves out into apparent being at all. Or, doing so, it would not be cosmic being, but simply an infinity of figures without fixed order or relation. If they did not hold or develop and bring out from themselves this fourth term of supermind, of the divine gnosis. There must be in every cosmos a power of knowledge and will, which out of infinite potentiality fixes determined relations, develops the result out of the seed, rolls out the mighty rhythms of cosmic law, and views and governs the worlds as their immortal and infinite seer and ruler. This power indeed is nothing else than Satchidananda himself. It creates nothing which is not in its own self-existence. And for that reason all cosmic and real law is a thing not imposed from outside, but from within. All development is self-development. All seed and result are seed of a truth of things, and result of that seed determined out of its potentialities. For the same reason, no law is absolute, because only the infinite is absolute, and everything contains within itself endless potentialities quite beyond its determined form and course, which are only determined through a self-limitation by idea, proceeding from an infinite liberty within. This power of self-limitation is necessarily inherent in the boundless all-existent. The infinite would not be the infinite if it could not assume a manifold finiteness. The absolute would not be the absolute if it were denied in knowledge and power and will and manifestation of being a boundless capacity of self-determination. This supermind, then, is the truth or real idea, inherent in all cosmic force and existence, which is necessary, itself remaining infinite, to determine and combine and uphold relation and order and the great lines of the manifestation. In the language of the Vedic rishis, as infinite existence, consciousness and bliss are the three highest and hidden names of the nameless, so this supermind is the fourth name. Fourth to that in its descent, fourth to us in our ascension. But mind, life and matter, the lower trilogy, are also indispensable to all cosmic being. Not necessarily in the form or with the action and conditions which we know upon earth or in this material universe, but in some kind of action, however luminous, however puissant, however subtle. For mind is essentially that faculty of supermind which measures and limits, which fixes a particular center and views from that the cosmic movement and its interactions. Granted that in a particular world, plane, or cosmic arrangement, mind need not be limited, or rather that the being who uses mind as a subordinate faculty need not be incapable of seeing things from other centers or standpoints, or even from the real center of all, or in the vastness of a universal self-diffusion. Still, if he is not capable of fixing himself normally in his own firm standpoint for certain purposes of the divine activity, if there is only the universal self-diffusion, or only infinite centers, without some determining or freely limiting action for each, then there is no cosmos, but only a being musing within himself infinitely, as a creator or poet may muse freely, not plastically, before he proceeds to the determining work of creation. Such a state must exist somewhere in the infinite scale of existence, but it is not what we understand by a cosmos. Whatever order there may be in it must be a sort of unfixed, unbinding order, such as supermind might evolve before it had proceeded to the work of fixed development, measurement, and interaction of relations. For that measurement and interaction, mind is necessary, though it need not be aware of itself as anything but a subordinate action of supermind, nor develop the interaction of relations on the basis of a self-imprisoned egoism, such as we see active in terrestrial nature. Mind once existent, life and form of substance follow. For life is simply the determination of force and action, of relation and interaction of energy from many fixed centers of consciousness. Fixed not necessarily in place or time, but in a persistent coexistence of beings or soul forms of the eternal, supporting a cosmic harmony. That life may be very different from life as we know or conceive it, but essentially it would be the same principle at work which we see here figured as vitality, the principle to which the ancient Indian thinkers gave the name of Vayu or Prana, the life stuff, the substantial will and energy in the cosmos working out into determined form and action and conscious dynamis of being. Substance, too, might be very different from our view and sense of material body, much more subtle, much less rigidly binding in its law of self-division and mutual resistance, and body or form might be an instrument and not a prison. Yet for the cosmic interaction, some determination of form and substance would always be necessary, even if it be only a mental body or something yet more luminous, subtle, and puissantly and freely responsive than the freest mental body. It follows that wherever cosmos is, there, even if only one principle be initially apparent, even if at first that seem to be the sole principle of things, and everything else that may appear afterwards in the world seem to be no more than its forms and results, and not in themselves indispensable to cosmic existence. Such a front presented by being can only be an illusory mask or appearance of its real truth. Where one principle is manifest in cosmos, there all the rest must be not merely present and passively latent, but secretly at work. In any given world, its scale and harmony of being may be openly in possession of all seven at a higher or lower degree of activity. In another, they may be all involved in one, which becomes the initial or fundamental principle of evolution in that world. But evolution of the involved there must be. The evolution of the sevenfold power of being, the realization of its septuple name, must be the destiny of any world which starts apparently from the involution of all in one power. Therefore, the material universe was bound in the nature of things to evolve from its hidden life, apparent life, from its hidden mind, apparent mind. And it must, in the same nature of things, evolve from its hidden supermind, apparent supermind, and from the concealed spirit within it, the triune glory of Satchidananda. The only question is whether the earth is to be a scene of that emergence, or the human creation on this or any other material scene, in this or any other cycle of the large wheelings of time, its instrument and vehicle. The ancient seers believed in this possibility for man and held it to be his divine destiny. The modern thinker does not even conceive of it, or if he conceived, would deny or doubt. If he sees a vision of the Superman, it is in the figure of increased degrees of mentality or vitality. He admits no other emergence, sees nothing beyond these principles, for these have traced for us up till now our limit and circle. In this progressive world, with this human creature in whom the divine spark has been kindled, real wisdom is likely to dwell with the higher aspiration rather than with the denial of aspiration, or with the hope that limits and circumscribes itself within those narrow walls of apparent possibility, which are only our intermediate house of training. In the spiritual order of things, the higher we project our view and our aspiration, the greater the truth that seeks to descend upon us, because it is already there within us and calls for its release from the covering that conceals it in manifested nature.